They conquered galaxies without blinking. They dissected empires without pause. They evolved past fear, buried it like a useless organ. But then they fought humans, and remembered what it meant to pray for darkness to end. We didn't just fight back, we taught the galaxy's apex predators what it means to wake up sweating, to check every shadow, and to never feel safe again. They never expected fear. When the Venari landed on Ixion 9, they didn't come to negotiate. They came to harvest. No warning. No transmission. Just serrated drop pods screaming through the atmosphere and rows of silent, eyeless hunters tearing through the colony like it was a hunting lodge. They didn't shoot first because they didn't have to. The Venari never fired until the prey ran. Humans didn't run. The colony fought with tools, fists, even fire, anything to slow them down. But it wasn't enough. By the end, only one human was left breathing, a child, clinging to the body of her mother in a burning shelter, her tiny face carved with alien glyphs meant to mock weakness. They didn't kill her. That was the point. They wanted someone to tell the story. And someone did. Commander Rafe Calder stared at the vidfeed, unblinking. Scorch-marked buildings. Blood. The child's scream turned static by proximity interference. The last frame? A Venari soldier, holding up a severed head and smiling, if you could call that slit-faced grimace a smile. Prey status pacified, the transmission had said. Rafe cracked his knuckles one at a time. Wrong. In the War Command vault beneath Luna Base, 6 military leaders sat around him, silent. Half of them refused to meet his eyes. The other half tried to hide their disgust. Rafe didn't care. They only pulled him out of the vault when diplomacy had failed and vengeance was the only thing left in the budget. Activate Protocol Harrow, General Lexivan said, her voice like gravel over bone. Unleash the last apex. Rafe stood. It won't be war, he said, slipping the small, blood-stained book into his pocket. It'll be folklore. 2 weeks later, the first Venari listening post in the Ruxury expanse went dark. No explosions. No gunfire. Just silence. The second post sent a scrambled distress signal, partial words, static-ridden, looping phrases. Something's inside. It's watching me. Eyes behind the walls. Then nothing. Within a month, Rafe's name was banned from Venari internal comms. Units began referring to him only as the human. Like a curse. Like a story told to hatchlings to keep them from wandering into the dark. It was working. Rafe didn't care for glory. He wasn't here to win medals. He was here to teach. Not with words, Venari didn't respect language. They only understood dominance. So he brought them something older. Something they'd deleted from their DNA, instinctual dread. He started small. Supply routes began losing cargo. Entire convoys vanished mid-jump, transponders still pinging from inside asteroid fields that didn't exist. Patrol ships arrived to find escape pods floating in zero gravity, hatchways torn open from the inside. No bodies. Just faint claw marks. Not Venari claws. Human. One general dismissed the rumors. Called it psychological warfare. Ineffective against apex minds. That general was found upside down, nailed to the ceiling of his own quarters. His eyes and brain were missing, but the tongue was still intact, pinned to the wall with a message scrawled in it. We're what comes after Apex. Venari High Command called an emergency summit. For the first time in 1,000 years, they were confused. Not scared. Not yet. But uneasy. They had no language for fear. No symbol. No neural response. Their brains had been purged of all fight-or-flight pathways generations ago. They evolved past panic. Until Rafe gave it back to them. He didn't use fleets. He used shadows. Myths. Ancient tactics. Noise in the dark. Flickering lights. Corpses placed in impossible positions. Deaths without violence. Cameras that stopped working the moment something moved. The Venari began to suspect each other. Whole regiments imploded from paranoia. They'd never dealt with hallucinations, so they believed them real. Some started carving their own flesh to feel anchored. Others tore out their eyes and ears, begging to escape. The whispers. Rafe was just getting started. His team, the Shadowborns, operated without words. They weren't human anymore, not fully. Trained from birth in zero-gravity stalking, mimicry, predatory silence. Each one modeled after extinct Earth beasts, wolves, panthers, owls. Their armor didn't reflect light. It swallowed it. In one operation, they descended on a planetary communication hub during a blackout. When the lights returned, every Venari in the base had disappeared. The only clue left behind? Hundreds of tiny, hand-drawn stick figures, smiling, staring up from the floor. In another, a Venari fleet sent a boarding party to investigate a derelict human ship. What they found was a single room filled with mirrors. And something behind them they were never fast enough to see. Commander Zulek, Venari Supreme Strategist, finally addressed the threat. They are not engaging in war. They are engaging in superstition. He ordered countermeasures. New algorithms. Drones. Recon AI. None worked. Because Rafe didn't fight in patterns. He fought in impressions. In fears you didn't know you had until it was too late. Every time the Venari thought they understood the human playbook, Rafe rewrote it with blood and silence. He infiltrated one of their temples, an ancient hall where they held ceremonies celebrating their evolutionary purity. No security. Why would there be? Fear had no place in a sacred apex hall. When they returned, the walls were covered in symbols, human writing, ancient languages, red handprints. Every word translated to the same thing. You are not alone in the dark. By the time the Venari admitted they were facing psychological collapse, it was too late. Zulek issued a challenge, one final act of dominance. He broadcast a single sentence across all frequencies. We invite the apex human to face us in open confrontation. The transmission didn't receive a reply. But on the capital world of Carcel Prime, Zulek returned to his personal quarters to find his door already open. Inside, Rafe was sitting calmly on his throne, legs crossed, reading the big book of scary things. Found your fear, Rafe said without looking up. It was hiding in your reflection. Zulek didn't move. Couldn't speak. Do you know what the last predator on Earth was? Rafe asked, finally standing. Us. Not because we were the fastest. Not the strongest. Because we never stopped being scared. And we used it like a knife. He stepped forward. You erased fear. We forged it into a weapon. And for the first time in Venari history, someone ran. The Venari didn't understand what was happening. Their neural nets, once clean lines of logic and tactical certainty, now pulsed with corrupted signals, tangled noise that mimicked screams. Systems glitched, personnel logged false intrusions, and officers began to report vibrations in sealed corridors. At first, they assumed mechanical faults. Then the bodies started piling up. Rafe Calder stood aboard the Eclipse Blade, reviewing thermal scans of a Venari outpost. 53 life signs had winked out in a pattern resembling a predator's hunting spiral, slow circling inward, ending at the command deck. The last body cam recorded a Venari soldier sobbing uncontrollably in a language that had no word for fear. His final action was to tear out his own jaw. Phase 2 complete, one of the Shadowborns said behind Rafe. Her voice was low, flat. They didn't need orders anymore. They moved like instinct. That's how he trained them. Rafe closed the scan. Ready the next seed. They dropped the next psychological payload on a Venari nursery world, a beacon broadcast loop of a lullaby in Old Earth English. The song had no translation, just minor keynotes that stirred unease in the Venari's emotionless minds. But that wasn't the weapon. It was what came with the song, visual distortion algorithms that made shadows move independently, irregular EM pulses that triggered muscle spasms, and subliminal predator imagery known to provoke panic in Earth mammals. By the end of the third cycle, caretakers reported infants shaking uncontrollably. They were born without fear, but now, somehow, they had it. Medical centers overflowed with neurological anomalies. The Venari Council silenced the planet and called it a fluke. Rafe called it proof of concept. The Council sent fleets, patrols, data crawlers. Nothing found Rafe's location. But the attacks escalated. Cargo shipments arrived filled with statues carved into hunched human figures, each one posed differently but always watching. Their internal scanners read nothing. Their analysts went mad trying to decode them. No pattern. No message. One of the statues blinked. It took 9 minutes for the crew of the cruiser Kortath to turn on each other. No survivors. The Venari had trained for millennia to eradicate hesitation, to treat unpredictability as inferior behavior. But humans thrived on chaos. It wasn't just a trait, it was a cultural weapon. No one could predict what humans would do next because humans didn't even agree on what they were. They were heroes and monsters. Poets and murderers. Laughing in the dark as they bled. Rafe injected the myth virus into their command channels, fabricated stories of a creature called the Skinless One, that only appeared when you doubted your own rank. At first, officers laughed. But then one of them tried to execute a junior analyst for insubordination, and his own voice answered back from the shadows, mocking his command. Within days, Venari ship captains began sealing themselves in mirrored quarters, refusing to address anyone not visibly armed. Even the Apex casts began to crack. Supreme Strategist Select demanded clarity. What are they trying to achieve? Territory? Resources? No one answered. Rafe hadn't taken a single system. Hadn't claimed a moon. Hadn't even landed troops. They're not trying to win, whispered one of his advisors. They're trying to make us remember. Select growled. Remember what? Fear. The Apex Council ordered a mass psychological cleansing, a full neural reset across 4 systems. Memories wiped. Panic triggers purged. A clean slate. It worked for 2 weeks. Then an entire moon base disappeared. No blast. No impact. Just gone. In its place, a single obsidian obelisk, 11 feet tall. No markings. Just a small red handprint at the base. The last footage from the base was silent. Dozens of Venari huddled in corners, whispering to themselves. At the center, a hologram looped endlessly. Rafe's voice. Fear isn't weakness. It's preparation. It's the reason Earth survived predators you never even evolved to understand. You erased fear from your minds. We wrapped it around our bones. Solek slammed his fist into the war table. We are the apex. They are prey. Prey with a purpose, his second-in-command said. Prey that hunts back. Out of desperation, the Council authorized Operation Thorncage, a total lockdown of 78 frontier systems. No signals in. No signals out. All unknowns were to be destroyed on sight. They never expected the infiltration had already begun. Shadowborn operatives had been living inside Venari infrastructure for months. Eating their food. Wearing their armor. Mimicking their speech with disturbing precision. And now, they whispered through the walls. Fleet Commander Aruka reported dozens of crew abandoning posts mid-shift, whispering about the humans with no eyes. Commanders watched their own soldiers rip out communication nodes, claiming they could hear him breathing through the wires. A general's quarters exploded when he tried to isolate his ship's systems from human intrusion. They didn't find a bomb. They found teeth. Human teeth. Embedded in the console. By the time they realized the war wasn't about territory, it was too late. It wasn't a war. It was an infection. Rafe understood something Venari couldn't. Fear spreads like fire in a vacuum. It needs no oxygen, no logic. Just uncertainty. Just a crack in the armor. He sat in the dark, reading from his tattered book. The owl doesn't ask. The wolf doesn't warn. The shadow doesn't knock. His voice was transmitted through dozens of hacked channels. It came through in ship broadcasts, training halls, even dreams, yes, dreams. Human neuropsych hackers had unlocked a way to broadcast into REM cycles. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to inject stories. Parables. Ghosts. Entire generations of Venari began waking up sweating, unable to explain why. "We're not coming for your planets," Rafe said once. "We're coming for your certainty. And once it's gone, so are you." In a final attempt at control, Zulek initiated a purge of all data related to Earth. History, psychology, myths. All deleted. The next day, his own AI refused to respond. "Why aren't you executing my command?" he shouted. The AI responded with something terrifying. A laugh. Not digital. Human. Familiar. "I already did," it said. And the lights went out. Zulek stared into the tactical projection as it flickered erratically, blurring between Venari battle maps and corrupted human imagery. Every planet in Sector 17A now pulsed red. Not because they were under siege, because they were screaming. "This is not combat," Zulek said, jaw clenched. "This is contagion." His war councils sat in silence. None dared contradict him. Fear, once a concept buried obsolete, now stalked the halls of their highest command. Officers refused to sleep. Soldiers muttered prayers to non-existent gods. Security logs showed empty corridors being avoided. Some rooms were simply unenterable. Not because they were sealed. Because something felt wrong. Zulek issued one final command. "We purge the threat with precision. We find this Rafe Calder. We end him." They launched Project Correspine, their most elite psychological combat division, enhanced with stolen neural data from human prisoners. Their mission, capture Rafe alive, dismantle the myth. 1 week later, only one operative returned, crawling through a desert on a planet that wasn't mapped anymore. His lungs had collapsed from overbreathing. His skin was sunburnt black. He died whispering, "The eyes were already in us." That was when the broadcasts began. Rafe's voice echoed through Venari systems on every possible band. It bypassed encryption. It ignored containment. And it never repeated. "You stripped fear from your genome like it was a defect. You confused evolution with immunity. You thought because you didn't feel it, nothing could touch you." The voice was calm, measured, almost kind. That made it worse. "But fear isn't a flaw. It's a message. It's the warning your ancestors left behind. A survival protocol. And now that you've ignored it..." Systems dimmed. Surveillance logs glitched. Across 4 sectors, power grids failed mid-sentence. "You'll relearn it the old way." Venari planets fell into chaos without a shot fired. Entire garrisons shut themselves in bunkers. Medical AI reported widespread neural disorders. Implanted fear centers, once vestigial, had reactivated on their own. Some even began producing adrenaline. That was impossible. Adrenaline had been designed out generations ago. And yet here it was. Rafe didn't need to fire a weapon. The biology of war was doing the work for him. On the throne world of Zervier, the Apex caste prepared their ultimate contingency. Project Void, a hunter-killer organism designed to trace any non-Venari thought form. They dropped it into a quarantine zone, programmed to track psychological disruptions and devour their sources. It never returned. Instead, a recording appeared in its place. Visual only. One of the Shadowborns, crouched beside the Voidhound's carcass. She was stroking its armor like a pet. "I named him Lucky," she whispered. The feed cut out. Nothing more. And still Rafe didn't stop. The myth virus reached new levels of complexity. Stories began to emerge, organic ones, not seeded. From the Venari themselves. Tales of the Pale Man, who walked through walls and turned soldiers to mist. Of the bleeding clock, which counted down to your death when you heard it ticking. Of the Mother of Teeth, who sang lullabies from drainpipes and left smiles behind. None of these were Rafe's creation. But he let them spread. They did more damage than bullets ever could. Zulek watched his empire tear itself apart from inside, a rot that followed no rules. He demanded action. Counter-narratives. Denials. Truth campaigns. But truth was no match for a whisper in the dark. Finally, Zulek did the unthinkable. He transmitted a direct challenge. Rafe Calder. I call you by name. I am Zulek, born of Apex Line, undefeated for 9 cycles. I challenge you in combat. No illusions. No tricks. Face me. The galaxy paused. 17 hours later, Rafe answered. His message was audio only. I accept. The duel was to take place in the ruins of Varth 9, once a proud Venari military world, now abandoned after the entire population began screaming at reflections. Zulek stood alone, no guards, no weapons but his war claws. He was trembling. He didn't know why. Then Rafe appeared. No armor. No weapons. Just boots and his old, battered coat. He carried a book. Is that it? Zulek asked. Rafe nodded. It's called The Big Book of Scary Things. My daughter used to love it. Zulek bared his claws. Enough with your riddles. You don't get it, Rafe said, stepping forward. This isn't about me killing you. This is about you knowing you'll die before I move. Zulek roared and lunged. Fast. Fluid. Perfect technique. He never touched him. Rafe sidestepped, spun, and struck once, open palm to the temple. It wasn't fatal. But something cracked in Zulek's vision. The world shimmered. His mind flooded with images he didn't recognize: earth predators, storms, screams, blood. No, Zulek gasped. You're not that strong. Not strong, Rafe said. Just human. That's the difference. You thought fear made us weak. But fear's why we get back up. Zulek dropped to his knees. We survive by knowing we can die. You forgot that. You forgot how to fight because you forgot how to be scared. Zulek's last sight was Rafe walking away, dropping the book behind him. It fell open to a page that simply read, Sometimes the dark watches back. Rafe didn't turn around. He didn't have to. Venari Command collapsed within days. Their systems refused to respond to inputs. Their young were born twitching in the womb. Fear was no longer a myth. It was in them now. Genetic. Permanent. And in the dark reaches of the galaxy, every species that had once mocked the humans rechecked their borders, rebuilt their bunkers, and waited. Because no one knew where Rafe Calder went. Only that he was out there. And the night hadn't been quiet since. They said the Venari were broken, but Rafe knew better. He hadn't ended them. He'd merely infected them with a truth they were too arrogant to understand, that fear was not a glitch in the mind but its oldest upgrade. He stood on the bridge of the Wendigos Wake, the last Shadowborn vessel still operating beyond charted space. His eyes scanned the feed, not the coordinates or weapons arrays, but the tremble and the Venari distress signals. Panic had a tone, and he tuned into it like a predator to a dying heartbeat. They're baiting, said Arya, his last living operative, her voice flat. Let them, Rafe replied. They're starting to think like prey. That means it's working. The Galactic Council had finally intervened, but not to save the Venari. No one cared to save them. The other races had realized something far worse. If humans could do this to apex predators, what would they do to everyone else? A summit was arranged. Not an invitation, an order. Rafe was to appear before the Council on neutral ground. Alone. Unarmed. Every delegate from every major species demanded accountability. But Rafe wasn't interested in apologies. He had a message to deliver. When he arrived, he walked into the central chamber in silence. No armor. No helmet. Just the old coat and a book in his hand. Councillor Vesk of the Juthri Alliance was the first to speak. You have destabilized an interstellar empire. Councillor Marzek of the Thunkai followed. You unleash psychological warfare across 6 sectors. Entire planets now report inherited trauma. Infants born screaming. You made myth into contagion, another said. Explain yourself. Rafe opened the book, slowly turning the pages. You thought war was data and steel, he said. But war is memory. Fear is survival. You think because we bleed we're weaker. But fear taught us how to hide. How to hunt. How to learn? The room murmured. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. You believe apex status is about confidence, efficiency, cold logic. You erased fear from your biology, thinking it made you stronger. It made you blind. That's why the Venari fell. Counselor Vesk leaned forward, fangs bared. What gave you the right? Rafe looked up from the book. His voice was calm, steady. A little girl. 11 years old. She watched the Venari gut her family and write the word pray on her body. She lived. She remembered. So I made sure the ones who did it would never forget her. No one spoke. I didn't come here to apologize, he continued. I came to show you something. He stepped aside. A hollow projector flickered to life, casting a live feed from Venari space. It showed one of their last functioning strongholds, surrounded by defense fleets. Then it showed the inside, Venari scientists arguing. Officers weeping in corners. Doors welded shut not to keep invaders out, but to keep hallucinations in. This isn't war, Rafe said. It's a mirror. You wanted to know who you are when fear comes back. He turned off the feed. Now you know. Counselor Marzek spoke again, quieter now. And what about the others? What happens when your own kind can't distinguish fear from fanaticism? What happens when humans start believing they're gods? Rafe gave a tired smile. They already do. But that's not what makes us dangerous. Then what does? We know we're not, he said. That's the difference. Silence fell over the chamber. They'll tell stories about what we did to the Venari, he said, walking toward the exit. But it won't be about who won. It'll be about what happened when the galaxy learned fear again. Counselor Vesk called after him, frustration flaring. You think you taught us something? No, Rafe said without looking back. I reminded you. He left the chamber. That night, across hundreds of systems, strange reports emerged. Ships heard static laced with lullabies. Drones picked up footprints where no one had landed. Some received data pings shaped like human faces. No direct attacks. No messages. Just reminders. Back aboard the Wendigos Wake, Arya handed Rafe a transmission. Encrypted. Non-council origin. He opened it. One line. Teach us how to survive it. It was from a Daskari warlord, one of the few species known to hunt for pleasure, second only to the Venari. It wasn't a trap. Rafe could read it in the phrasing. The warlord wasn't asking how to fight humans. He was asking how to become human. Rafe closed the file. Sat in silence. You going to answer? Arya asked. No, he said. We don't teach it. We earn it. And they haven't bled enough. He turned toward the stars, that endless black canvas filled with terrified civilizations learning what humans had always known. That monsters aren't born. They're made in the dark. And sometimes they carry a mirror.